Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Atira. Together with Ahmad Ridwan and Muhammad Ali Fizuddin, we will present to you our presentation of Phases of Economic Thoughts in Spain from 17th century until 19th century. The 17th century was the age of Enlightenment and early reformers. The 18th century saw a growth in Enlightenment philosophy throughout Europe, including Spain. The Enlightenment concepts affected economic thoughts at that period. Physiocracy and mercantilism were Spain's early economic ideas, primarily influenced by mercantilism, which emphasized state control over the economy, wealth gain through commerce, and colonialism. The 19th century saw the emergence of liberalism in Spain, echoing broader European trends. Economic intellectuals began to advocate for free trade, reduce government intervention, and increase economic freedom. As Spain began to industrialize, philosophers concentrated on the economic consequences of these developments. In the latter century, Spain maintained its modernization process, focusing more on industry, infrastructure, and technology, which also saw the emergence of intellectuals such as Ramiro de Maeztu and Ortega y Gasset contributed to economic theory by participating in larger discussions about Spain's place in Europe and national identity and economic development. Spain's economic theory underwent a substantial transition in the 17th century, influenced by the larger Enlightenment movement and European shifts. The accession of the Bourbon dynasty following the War of Spanish Succession 1701 until 1714 resulted in significant changes to the Spanish monarchy. The Bourbons aspired to modernize Spain's administration and economy so that it could compete with other European nations, particularly France and Britain. Mercantilism, which pushed for governmental control over the economy, a positive trade balance, and wealth accumulation through colonies, had a significant impact on Spain's economic framework at that time. The Bourbons' reforms sought to centralize authority, rationalize administration, and impose greater control over the economic operations. This centralization followed mercantilist ideals and aimed to strengthen the state's involvement in economic management. Following these Socratic principles, certain Spanish philosophers began to emphasize agriculture's importance as a source of national prosperity.
Spain's economic environment saw substantial change through the 20th century as a result of both domestic and external forces. In 1898, after losing its colonies, Spain started a domestic industrial revolution, leveraging its rich iron ore reserve and agriculture basis to focus on the steel, shipbuilding, and textile industries. But obstacles like reliance on foreign technology made it harder to be competitive. Even though Spain's economy lagged behind that of other European countries, it nevertheless worked towards convergence by defending its sectors through protectionist trade policies. However, there was still income inequality, which primarily affected people living in rural areas, which subsequent to the Spanish Civil War, which further impeded progress. The French government implemented autarkic economic policies that isolated Spain from the rest of the world while striving for self-sufficiency. Overall, the 20th century marked significant economic transformation for Spain through challenges of technological dependency, economic inequality, and political instability persisted. Okay, now we are going to the 19th century posed significant challenge for Spain's economic development. After the Peninsular War, 1808 until 1814, it devastated the nation's infrastructure and finance, which creating substantial obstacle to recovery and modernization. Additionally, efforts at industrialization and railway construction were hampered by a lack of coal and insufficient investment in resource extraction and transportation infrastructure. Moreover, Spain's economy remained heavily dependent on agriculture, making it vulnerable to globally market fluctuation. Furthermore, the decline of the Spanish Empire disrupted traditional trade routes and revenue streams, further compounding economic difficulties. Next, the inefficient and corrupt government institution struggle to implement effective economic policies amidst political instability. Furthermore, limited limited educational opportunities hindered the development of a skilled workforce, while a risk-averse cultural mindset tempered entrepreneurial spirit and innovation. This internal limitation create significant barriers to Spain's economic progress throughout the 19th century, preventing it from keep pace with the industrialization, transforming other parts of Europe.
Hi, my name is Mama Alifuddin. So today I will explain to you about the advantage of the evolution of economic thought in Spain. So, firstly, it's about the introduction and natural constraint. Spain's economy was predominantly agrarian, influenced by factors like climate, terrain, and access to water. These natural constraints significantly shape agricultural practices and productivity. Next is growth patterns and comparative performance. In the 70s, Spain faced political unrest, conflicts, and economic downturns. However, the 80s marked the beginning of economic improvement. Spain's economic performance fluctuated relative to Western Europe, sometimes converging with standard at the other times diverging. Next is the nominal variables and money supply. Long-term fluctuation in prices and exchange rates significantly impacted Spain's economy. These nominal variables were closely correlated with the money supply, providing insight into inflation, currency stability, and economic fluctuation. Next is alternate measures of well-being. Beyond GDP, other metrics like height, which is reflecting in diet and health, and human development measures offer a more comprehensive view of well-being. Improvement in these areas mirror societal changes and better living conditions. Hi, next is the advantage of the evolution of economic thoughts in Spain. First is about the inefficient institution and political instability. So, in the 70s and 80s, internal strife, wars, and frequent leadership changes hampered economic advancement. Because of the lack of significant technological breakthroughs, further affected productivity and industrialization. Next is agricultural dependence and land distribution. Spain's economy was predominantly agrarian with unequal land distribution limited by large estates. So, the absence of modern farming methods and land reforms hindered overall economic progress. Next is colonial legacy and foreign dependency. The loss of colonies reduced trade opportunities and access to important resources. The persistent foreign dependency limited Spain's global competitiveness and economic sovereignty. Other than that, lack of technological innovation also the disadvantage of evolution of economic thoughts in Spain. So, lack of technological innovation is because of the Spain lag behind other Euro countries in technological development. And then the Industrial Revolution had minimal impact on Spain economy in the 19th century. Next is financial stability and currency issues. So, Spain experienced financial crisis and debt defaults. The fragmented monetary system with several currencies in use was stabilized by the establishment of the peseta in 1868. The last one is the education and human capital. Low levels of education, especially in rural areas, and a scarcity of skilled personnel impeded technological adoption and innovation. Limited investment in human capital and education affected long-term economic development. So, in conclusion, from the 70s to the 90s, Spain economic philosophy evolved through key transition and challenges. First is colonial wealth, which brought riches but led to dependency and vulnerability. Next is post-colonial shift, which transitioned to self-sustained domestic production and trade. And then 19th century reforms, which modernized economy influenced by Enlightenment and Industrial Revolution ideas despite institutional challenges. Next is global trade integration with strategic trade location with disruptions from conflicts. Lastly, resilience. Historical lessons shape policies fostering its adaptability in the global economy. So that's all from me. Thank you.